Pakistan's army chief flew to Tehran and stayed 3 full days. He wasn't passing through, he wasn't making a quick courtesy call. He parked himself in the Iranian capital and met everyone who matters: the president, the foreign minister, the guy who led Iran's delegation at Islamabad, and the head of Iran's military central command. That's not a drop-in, that's a presence. The warm hug Iran's foreign minister gave him on the tarmac wasn't standard protocol. You don't hug foreign military officials like that unless there's history, unless there's trust, unless both sides have been deliberately keeping a channel open because they need it. That hug was a signal. It said this relationship is real and both sides want it alive. And he wasn't empty-handed. Pakistani officials described what he carried as a new message from Washington. Not vague goodwill, not general wishes for peace. A message, specific, carried personally, delivered across 3 days of meetings at the highest level Pakistani military presence in Iran since this war started. Before the army chief ever boarded his flight, Pakistan's prime minister had already been grinding. For days, 3 capitals, Jeddah, Doha, and Antalya, meeting the Saudi crown prince, the Qatari emir, Erdogan's team, not for photo ops. His office called it building consensus in support of a sustained process of dialogue that's deliberate. Language, sustained process, not one meeting, not a single round, a process. Then he called Iran's president directly. The call lasted 45 minutes. That's not a check-in, that's a negotiation. That's a leader working a relationship in real time, following up face-to-face meetings with personal phone diplomacy at the head of state level. Pakistan's position is unambiguous. Islamabad is ready to host. The table is literally set. Security arrangements are in place. They've done everything a mediator can possibly do. And Iran's own ambassador confirmed Tehran would not consider any other venue. So Pakistan isn't just the preferred host. It's the only host Iran will accept. Turkey's president went public with his role, and the exact language matters because leaders choose their public words with surgical precision. He said he is conveying the necessary suggestions and carrying out initiatives to ease tensions, extend the ceasefire, and maintain talks. Read that again. Not supporting the process, not hoping for talks, carrying out initiatives, active, present tense, personal mediation in real time. A sitting president describing himself as a working diplomat while the crisis is unfolding. Turkey co-hosted the Antalya Diplomacy Forum precisely to manufacture a multilateral frame that gives Iran political cover. Here's how that works. If multiple countries are pressing Iran simultaneously, Iran can respond to the coalition rather than appearing to submit to American pressure alone. That's not accidental. Turkey has played this exact role before. Iran knows what it means when Erdogan says personally that he is conveying suggestions. Egypt doesn't hold press conferences about its mediation. That's not how Cairo operates. Egyptian diplomats and security officials have been confirmed as active messengers between Washington and Tehran throughout this conflict. Carnegie analysts verified it. NPR reported it. They do the work behind the scenes, invisible, carrying language. Back and forth, testing positions, softening the framing before anything ever reaches a negotiating table. Egypt represents something specific here. It's the Arab world's largest country and most diplomatically experienced state. When Egypt carries messages, it carries weight, it carries history, it carries relationships with both sides that go back decades, and it's choosing to use that capital on this problem, quietly, without demanding credit. Saudi Arabia's role has shifted dramatically, and that shift tells you how much the ground has moved. The Wall Street Journal reported that Saudi Arabia is pressing Washington directly to abandon the blockade, not quietly suggesting, not privately mentioning, pressing, because Saudi Arabia has been told explicitly by Iran that if the blockade continues, no port in the region will be safe. Iran's military commander said security in the Persian Gulf is either for everyone or for no one. That's not abstract philosophy. That's a threat to every terminal, every facility, every piece of oil infrastructure Saudi Arabia depends on. The country this conflict was partly framed around protecting is now the country most urgently lobbying for de-escalation. The Crown Prince received both Pakistan's Prime Minister and its Field Marshal. He praised their constructive role. He sent them back with backing for the process. Constructive is diplomatic vocabulary with specific meaning. It means we endorse what you're doing. Keep doing it. We want this to succeed. That's not neutral. That's active support. Saudi Arabia has interests in every direction here. It hosts American bases. It depends on American security guarantees. And it's watching Iran threaten every port, every terminal, every oil facility if the war resumes. The tension in Saudi policy is visible. They need the American relationship. They also need the region not to burn. Now step back and look at what these 4 countries represent together. Pakistan provides the venue Iran actually trusts and the army chief Iran's foreign minister hugs on the tarmac. Turkey provides Erdogan's personal diplomatic credibility with both Islamic and Western governments. Egypt provides the Arab world's most experienced back-channel operators. Saudi Arabia provides the financial and strategic weight of the Gulf's dominant power and the country with the most to lose if Iran resumes targeting the region. Together, they represent the broadest, most credible, most active mediating coalition that has ever been assembled around a US-Iran standoff. Think about that, ever assembled. This isn't a casual arrangement. This is historic in scale and seriousness, and Iran has not said yes to one of them. That's the fact the coverage keeps softening. It's not scheduling friction. It's not bureaucratic delay. It's not translation issues or calendar conflicts. Iran has received the invitations. Iran has heard the appeals. Iran understands the stakes completely, and Iran issued a formal public statement through its foreign ministry spokesman that there are no plans to attend. State media called the talks a media game. Iran's judiciary head said the Islamic Republic will definitely respond to the blockade and the ceasefire expires Wednesday evening. So here's the question the coverage isn't answering. Why can Iran say no to all of them? What gives Iran the confidence to refuse the most credible diplomatic coalition ever assembled? The answer is the same structural fact that has been the answer throughout this war. Iran has enough external support that the cost of refusing has not yet exceeded the cost of accepting American terms. And that external support isn't coming from Pakistan or Turkey or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, it's coming from China. I call this the mechanism, and the mechanism has one simple rule. As long as China's oil purchases give Iran the economic oxygen to refuse, every mediator's invitation becomes optional, not mandatory, not urgent, optional. China is buying 157.7 million barrels of Iranian crude right now at sea as we speak. The blockade has turned back 27 ships from Iranian ports. It has not stopped one barrel heading to China, not one. Iran's oil revenues are damaged but not severed. The rial is down 15%, the central bank told the president privately. That recovery could take 12 years. That pain is absolutely real, but pain is not collapse. And the gap between pain and collapse is the gap that China's dark fleet, yuan payment system, and Security Council veto have been designed to maintain. China's customs records show zero imports from Iran, that's the official number, but China's recorded imports of so-called Malaysian crude run to 1.3 million barrels per day. Here's the problem, that's more than double Malaysia's entire oil production. The oil is coming from Iran, relabeled, transferred at sea, processed by Chinese teapot refineries without documentation. The system was built during the sanctions years. This war made it visible, and the blockade cannot reach it because CENTCOM's own language explicitly excludes vessels heading to non-Iranian ports. That language was written precisely so that Chinese tankers would not need to be stopped, because stopping them creates a confrontation with China that America cannot afford before the Trump summit in May. That's not speculation, that's the explicit architecture of the blockade. Before this war, Iran was exporting 1.68 million barrels of oil per day during the most intense weeks of the conflict. With Hormuz largely closed and American bombing at its peak, Iran exported 1.84 million barrels per day, more during the war than before it. How does that happen? How does a country whose supreme leader was killed on day one, whose nuclear facilities were bombed, whose air defenses were degraded, export more oil during war than before it? The answer is the system China built over a decade specifically to survive exactly this kind of American pressure. It was designed for this moment, it was tested during sanctions, it was scaled up during the war, and it's working. The Financial Times confirmed from leaked Iranian documents that the IRG used satellite imagery from a Chinese commercial firm called Earth ICO to target American military bases, Prince Sultan Air Base, Muwafaq Salti Air Base, positions near the 5th Fleet Naval Base in Bahrain. China helped Iran see where America was so Iran could hit those places more accurately. CBS News confirmed this from two US officials independently. So it's not just economic oxygen, it's intelligence cooperation, it's targeting assistance, it's a comprehensive support system that keeps Iran functioning as a military and economic actor even while under direct American attack. As long as that system runs, Iran has oxygen, and a country with oxygen can tell for active mediators. Not yet, not no forever, but not yet, and not yet is a powerful word when you have enough breathing room to wait. Here's what makes that oxygen supply even more significant today. Russia called Iran this morning. Lavrov confirmed Russia's unwavering readiness to assist in resolving the crisis and to facilitate mutually acceptable agreements between Iran and the Gulf Arab states. Iran in return confirmed its readiness to guarantee unimpeded passage of Russian vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. Two countries exchanged specific reciprocal commitments. Russia gets a Hormuz guarantee. Iran gets strategic cover. On the same morning that Iran was publicly refusing every mediator's invitation. Think about that timing. Iran hasn't said yes to Pakistan or Turkey or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, but Iran has already told Russia what comes next through Hormuz. That asymmetry tells you precisely how Iran is ranking its relationships right now. The mediators get polite receptions and careful language. Russia gets concrete guarantees. China gets silent, sustained, systematic support that keeps the entire Iranian economy on life support. The mediators are asking Iran to change its position. Russia and China are helping Iran maintain it. Now let me explain what the mediators are actually asking Iran to accept, because I think the coverage treats this as a generic call for talks. It's not generic. The gap between what the mediators are asking and what Iran is willing to give is specific, and it has been specific since February 28. America's position, delivered through all four of these countries at various points, is built around two non-negotiables. First, no nuclear enrichment. Trump said it to every reporter who asked, no nuclear weapon. That is 99% of it. Vance said it in Islamabad. We need an affirmative commitment that Iran will not seek a nuclear weapon and will not seek the tools to quickly achieve one. Second, Hormuz open under conditions that do not recognize Iranian sovereign authority over the strait. America wants free navigation. Iran wants managed navigation. Ships coordinating with Iranian authorities. Iran retaining effective control. Iranian tolls continuing to be paid. Those two positions have not moved since the Islamabad talks. Vance said Iran came 80% of the way. The 20% that remains is not a rounding error. It is the entire question of whether Iran emerges from this war as a country that can enrich uranium and control its own waters, or as a country that has surrendered both to Washington. There is a third condition that sits underneath these two and rarely gets named directly. Iran's five-point counterproposal submitted before Islamabad demanded war reparations, security guarantees against future US and Israeli aggression, and international recognition of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. America has not responded to any of those three demands publicly. Not a rejection, not a counteroffer, silence. So Iran's position is, we gave you a framework, you gave us a blockade, you seized our ship, you told the world you're bombing us again if we don't accept your terms. Now countries are asking us to come to a table that you keep turning into a table of surrender, and you're calling that diplomacy. Iran's parliament speaker said, it plainly, Trump wants to turn the negotiating table into a table of surrender or to justify renewed warmongering. That is not hardline rhetoric for domestic consumption. That is an accurate description of the terms gap as Iran's chief negotiator understands it. And the president said Monday that deep historical mistrust toward US government conduct remains, that unconstructive and contradictory signals from American officials carry a bitter message. They seek Iran's surrender. Iranians do not submit to force. Those are the words of Iran's civilian president. On a day when Iran's official position was that it had no plans to attend talks, the civilian president and the military command are saying the same thing publicly, that alignment is significant. For most of this conflict, those two Irans were visibly in disagreement. The Irg overruled the foreign minister's Hormuz opening within hours. The hardliners contradicted the negotiators publicly. But today, the president's surrender language and the military command's response is coming language are pointing in the same direction. When the civilian government and the military command align publicly on defiance, the four countries begging Iran to come to Pakistan have a harder problem than a scheduling conflict. They have a government that has decided it's in. Internal political cost of going to Pakistan on current American terms is higher than its external political cost of not going. Let me steelman the argument that the mediators are about to succeed because the case for optimism is real and I want you to test both sides fairly. The optimistic argument goes like this. Iran has never confirmed its position publicly until the last possible moment in this conflict. Before round one, Iran's official position was that it had no plans to attend. Then Iran sent 70 negotiators, the contradiction between the foreign ministry's no-plan statement and the negotiators. Today or tomorrow statement is the same gap that existed before Islamabad. The public refusal is posturing, not a final decision. Iran's ambassador confirmed Tehran would do talks in Pakistan and nowhere else. Not that Iran is refusing Pakistan, but that Iran is negotiating the terms of arrival. The venue is settled. The question is the conditions under which Iran shows up. The four mediating countries being active simultaneously is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of coordinated pressure applied at a scale this conflict has not seen before. Pakistan's credibility with both sides remains intact. The army chief's warm tarmac reception from the foreign minister is not theater. It is a relationship that both sides are deliberately maintaining because both sides want the channel open. The Turkish foreign minister told CNN directly that the ceasefire deadline will have to be extended, suggesting Turkey has private signals from one or both sides that Wednesday is not the terminal point but a pressure moment, and Trump said this morning that the concept of the deal is done. That language concept done is what a president says when the framework exists and the details remain. It is possible that the four mediating countries have already delivered enough of the framework privately that what Iran is waiting for is not permission to attend, but a specific American gesture on the blockade or the seized ship that lets Iran's domestic narrative describe attendance as response to that gesture rather than submission to American pressure. That argument is serious. Iran's gap between public statement and private action is the defining pattern of its negotiating style throughout this conflict. The back channel is alive. Pakistan's credibility has not been exhausted. An extension or a deal before Wednesday evening is not structurally impossible. But here is what the steelman cannot account for. Every round of pressure, military, economic, diplomatic, has produced movement up to 80% and then stalled, not because Iran lacks the technical capacity to reach a deal, because the final 20% is not a technical question. The chief negotiator said it on camera after Islamabad. We have no trust in the opposing side, not a capability gap. a trust deficit, and every American action since Islamabad has confirmed what Iran's hardliners have been saying since the war began. The blockade went up inside the ceasefire, the ship was seized, the uranium demands shifted. You cannot deal with these people. Every inch we give, they take too. For mediating countries cannot fix a trust deficit that America keeps deepening with each escalation. Pakistan cannot deliver a yes that America's own behavior makes politically impossible for Iran's internal power structure to accept. And there is a structural constraint that the steelman also cannot address. The URG has effectively blocked the president's appointments and erected a security cordon around the supreme leader. The faction inside Iran that most consistently opposes any deal on American terms is the faction currently in control of access to the supreme leader. When the URG controls the supreme leader's access and the civilian government's appointments simultaneously, the four countries begging Iran to come to Pakistan are negotiating with the wrong faction. The diplomat can board a plane. The URG decides what he can sign. Watch three things before Wednesday evening. The first is whether Iran's judiciary chief follows through on his statement that the Islamic Republic will definitely respond to the blockade. He said it today specifically, not about the seized ship, about the blockade as a pattern of American behavior. If that response comes before Wednesday, the ceasefire is over in substance regardless of what any mediator says. If it comes after Wednesday, it is the opening move of the resumed conflict, and the scale will tell you whether Iran has made what I call the Japan decision. The decision that the window for its most dangerous move is closing and that acting now gives it options that waiting will not. The second thing to watch is whether any of the four mediating countries announces a confirmed Iranian delegation, not a source telling a reporter, not a private signal to a mediator, a formal confirmation that a named Iranian official has boarded a plane to Islamabad. The standard in this conflict has been that public confirmation comes hours before arrival. If Tuesday passes without formal confirmation, Wednesday is not a negotiation. It is a deadline, and watch specifically whether the foreign minister or the URG negotiator is named in that confirmation. The foreign minister's presence means the diplomatic faction is operating. The URG negotiator's presence means the URG has approved the trip. Both present means a genuine attempt at a deal. Only one present means the other faction is holding something back. The third thing is what China does with the Hormuz guarantee Iran gave Russia this morning. China has 157.7 million barrels of Iranian crude already at sea. Russia has a confirmed guarantee of passage. If China makes any public statement that its commercial interests in Hormuz are protected regardless of what happens Wednesday, watch for language about China's shipping being guaranteed, unimpeded, or coordinated with Iranian authorities. That is China publicly positioning for the resumed war, not the deal. China does not issue dramatic statements. It issues quiet language in foreign ministry readouts that nobody reads closely. The specific phrase to watch for is freedom of navigation for Chinese vessels or similar. If that appears before Wednesday, China has already made its calculation. Push back on this if you see it differently. Read the reports on Pakistan's mediation, specifically the detail about the army chief spending 3 days in Tehran and the warm hug from the foreign minister on the tarmac. Read the Carnegie analysis confirming Egypt and Turkey as active messengers. Read the Wall Street Journal report that Saudi Arabia is pressing Washington to abandon the blockade. Read the parliament speaker's surrender table statement. Read the president's submit to force statement, both made by senior Iranian officials on the same day, both pointing in the same direction. Read the Russian foreign ministry readout from the Lavrov call, specifically the Hormuz guarantee Iran gave Russia while publicly refusing every mediating country. Then ask the question that nobody at any of the four countries' press briefings has answered today. Pakistan has credibility Iran trusts. Turkey is conveying active initiatives. Egypt is running messages. Saudi Arabia is lobbying Washington, and Iran still has not said yes. The four countries begging Iran to come to Pakistan are not the problem, and they are not the solution. They are the messenger service for a negotiation between three countries, not four. And the country that is not in that messenger service has not said a word today about whether Iran comes to Pakistan. Watch what that country does not say before Wednesday evening, because silence from Beijing is not absence. It is presence without accountability. It is the oxygen that keeps Iran breathing while four countries exhaust themselves carrying messages Iran has already decided not to answer. The mediators will keep working. They have no choice. The region's stability depends on it, but understanding that their effort, however heroic, however skillful, however sincere, does not address the structural reason Iran can afford to wait. That understanding is the key to knowing what Wednesday actually means. It doesn't mean the talks almost happened. It doesn't mean the mediators almost succeeded. It means Iran looked at the cost of yes and the cost of no, measured the oxygen China provides, counted the barrels still flowing, checked the Russian guarantee, and decided, not yet. Not never, not impossible, but not yet. And in diplomacy, not yet is the most expensive word in the language, because every hour it continues, the trust deficit deepens. Every hour, the hardliners strengthen. Every hour, the window narrows. The four mediators know this. They feel it in every conversation. They see it in every non-answer. They keep working anyway because the alternative is worse. But they are not working against Iranian reluctance alone. They are working against a system built over a decade to make Iranian reluctance sustainable. That system has a headquarters in Beijing, it has a branch office in Moscow, and it has no interest in seeing Iran surrender its enrichment capacity or its Hormuz control to American terms. So when you watch Wednesday approach, don't watch the mediators, watch the structure, watch the oil, watch the guarantees, watch what China does. Not say, because that silence is the loudest voice in the room, and it has been from the beginning. The coverage will tell you this is about scheduling, about friction, about the difficulty of bringing parties together in a complex region. That's not wrong. It's just incomplete. The scheduling problem is real. The trust problem is deeper. The structural problem is deepest of all, because you can fix a schedule. You can build trust. Over time, you cannot easily change the fact that one of the world's largest economies has built an entire shadow infrastructure specifically to undermine the pressure you're trying to apply. That's not a mediation problem. That's a geopolitical reality. And for countries, however credible, however committed, however skilled, cannot negotiate away a reality that exists in Beijing's strategic calculations. They can only work around it. They can only hope that the costs Iran pays despite Chinese support the rial's fall. The 12-year recovery timeline, the bombed facilities, the killed leaders eventually outweigh the benefits of waiting. But that's a bet on Iranian pain tolerance. It's not a bet on Iranian diplomatic flexibility. And pain tolerance is a dangerous thing to bet against in a country that has spent decades building its identity around resistance to external pressure. So watch carefully, watch the judiciary chief's promised response, watch for the delegation confirmation, watch China's readouts for Hormuz language. These are not indicators of whether talks will happen, they are indicators of whether the structure that makes talks optional has shifted. If none of them shift, Wednesday is not a near miss, it is a decision that the current terms are worse than the current costs. A decision that for mediators, however heroic, cannot override, and that decision once made sets the trajectory for everything that follows, not because Iran wants war, because Iran has calculated that the terms of peace, as currently offered, cost more than the risks of continuing to fight. That calculation may be wrong, it may be right, but it is rational, and understanding it as rational, rather than as stubbornness or miscalculation, is the first step toward any policy that might actually change it. Because you cannot persuade someone who believes you are offering surrender that they should accept negotiation. You can only change the offer, or change their calculation of the costs of refusal. America has not changed the offer. China has prevented the costs of refusal from becoming prohibitive, and 4 countries stand in the middle, carrying messages between a party that won't bend and a party that can't afford to look like it's bending. That's not a recipe for breakthrough. That's a recipe for extension, for delay, for managed tension that never resolves. And in the Middle East, managed tension has a habit of becoming unmanaged war at the moment everyone least expects it. So the mediators will keep flying, they'll keep calling, they'll keep hugging on tarmacs and convening forums and running back channels, because that's what mediators do. That's what the region needs, that's what the moment demands, but they should not mistake their own necessity for their own efficacy. They are necessary because the structure is broken. They are not sufficient to fix it. Only the parties to the underlying conflict can do that, and one of those parties has decided that silence, for now, serves its interests better than speech. Watch what China does not say, it matters more than what anyone else says, and it will matter until the structure changes, or until the war makes the structure irrelevant. Wednesday is not a deadline for diplomacy. It is a test of whether diplomacy's current form can survive the structural realities that created this crisis. The mediators will pass the test of effort. They always do. The question is whether effort, however extraordinary, is what this moment actually requires. Or whether something else, something harder, something more fundamental, something that addresses the oxygen supply rather than the breathing is the only thing that can break the pattern of almost that has defined this entire conflict. Almost talks, almost ceasefires, almost deals, almost peace. The mediators deserve credit for fighting against almost, but they should not be judged by whether they achieved the impossible. They should be judged by whether they made the possible visible. And right now, the possible is hiding behind a wall of structural support that for countries, however united, however skilled, cannot dismantle alone. That wall has a name, it has an address, it has a policy. And until that policy shifts, or until the costs of maintaining it exceed the benefits, Wednesday will be another almost. Another near miss, another moment when the world watched for countries try their best and one country decide that best was not yet good enough. Not because Iran is irrational, because Iran is calculating. And its calculation, however disturbing to the mediators, however dangerous to the region, however costly to its own people, is grounded in a reality that 4 countries cannot change by shuttle diplomacy alone. That reality is the story behind the story. It is the mechanism beneath the mediation. It is the reason Iran can say no while 4 countries beg it to say yes. And it will remain the story until someone addresses it directly, or until the war makes all stories irrelevant. Watch Beijing, not because Beijing will announce its role, because Beijing won't. And in that silence is the answer to why four countries can try so hard and achieve so little. The silence is the strategy. The silence is the support. The silence is the oxygen. And as long as it continues, almost is the best anyone can hope for.